I did something different today, all right? And I basically everyone in the backstage. So I decided I'll do something different today. Here we go.
Nice. I was like, hey, where am I now? Where am I now?
Yeah, well, now we know you in the backstage, right? Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us this week on Leadership in Flow Asia. And this week we have Ashok and me helming the stage. Ashok, you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Leadership in Flow Asia Season 3. We started this in 2022. And what is this show all about for all our friends who are locked in here to listen to us? Well, this show we interview leaders to understand their, their thinking behind how they grow at a personal level, their
Mm.
own leadership level, their teams, and also the business results. Right? So we look at these three areas and then we try and find out what do they do differently. And we've been getting a lot of nuggets and wisdom from a lot of leaders in the last 3 years. Right? And
Correct.
today, who do we have, Sham?
Yeah, but before I bring on who we have, today we're going to be talking about something a little bit more, intellectually stimulating, right? It's
Uh,
like the logical left brain kind of area, right? Um, and yeah, so I'm like, I have to be on top of my game on this one. So we're going to talk about predictive analytics, right? And
wow.
how yeah, I mean, don't wow me because you're the one who came up with the title. Okay,
Really?
and how HR can prophesize using predictive analytics. But before we get into the topic itself, let's do the introduction to our guest for this week. He is Georgie Antony, and I have put his email oh sorry not LinkedIn
LinkedIn.
handle on our comment, so he's the person for you to link to. And we met Ashok, just to remind you, we met Georgie in our November leadership learning festival in
Hmm,
November last year, right? And I
that is right.
invited Georgie, and he said yes, and we that was the first time we met. Then after that festival, I caught up with him over coffee over
Hmm.
in the east, because we're both easties, including you, so all three of us are easties, and we had an interesting chat. One of the things that was quite interesting is that this is a man who has crossed sides. So he's been in corporate,
Hmm.
and corporate in some of the big names out there. If you check out his LinkedIn, you'll know where he's been to, and he's moved now to the other, and sometimes I call it the dark side lah. So that's the side that we are in. So let's bring Georgie up, and I'll do that, and we'll say hello and ask him the questions that we have for him. Let me add him to stage, and then move me into our proper positions, because here we go. Hi, hi,
Everybody.
Georgie.
Hi,
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 good
Hi,
evening.
Georgie. You?
hi. Good to be here.
Good. And how are you feeling today?
Good.
Ah,
All
it's
good.
an evening, right? We may be between you and dinner, and or maybe time with your wife and your daughters, if they're visiting. So I thought, maybe we
Yeah.
should get into it, have our conversation, and I think along the way we will probably have some things that we can chit chat. That's personal along the way.
Yeah.
Okay, Ashok, you want to get the ball rolling?
Sure. Thank you very much, Georgie. Okay, so for all the guests who have whoever have been logging in today, yes, Georgie knows more than 5 languages. We'll get into that later. But let's talk about predictive analysis or analytics in that sense. Now, Georgie, you've been a HR person, obviously, the head of HR in many organizations, and today you're also focusing on tech as a way to predict attrition. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Tell us about why predictive analysis on attrition is important for business.
Yeah. So if you look at traditionally, the way HR used to handle this issue of attrition was primarily looking at what has happened in the past. So it was more looking in the rearview mirror and saying that, okay, last month my attrition was X percentage, and it is better than the previous month or worse than the previous month, and so on. And as a result of that, what used to happen was typically most organizations have a talent pool. which they identify. I mean, these are our must-keep employees. These are our high potentials. And when one of them used to resign, obviously the organization wants to retain the person. So then it becomes a post-resignation conversation. That conversation, typically, it is a very difficult conversation because if an employee has made the decision to submit a resignation, he always sees the other side as greener pastures. So therefore, he is already kind of half into the new organization. So therefore, for him to take back that resignation and continue with the existing organization is always a difficult maneuvering of the decision. So now what we are looking at is now the technology has evolved with using AI and machine learning and all that in the HR technology, in the HRMS, HR management system and HR IT and all that. So therefore, what we are able to do now is using AI and machine learning and all that, using the past data, we are able to look at with reasonable confidence, I would say, what is the likelihood of a person leaving the organization. So this gives us a kind of more proactive opportunity. So we get to know, okay, this person, there is a 80% chance that person is going to leave the organization. So between that person manager and the HR, they could look at what are the issues, why is this person likely to leave the organization, and take some proactive steps. So that's how where the predictive analytics becomes critical in the attrition context.
This is interesting because you got me excited already. Because here, what you're saying is, yes, in the past, you looked at it from a rear view mirror, right?
Yeah.
And you talked about retaining very good high potential people, and it becomes very difficult to try and hold them back. But now what you're saying is, with reasonable prediction, right, with machine learning and AI, you're able to predict which of this high potential could possibly leave.
Yeah.
So is it only for high potential or even across the board?
You can do it across the board, but you
Okay.
see, the thing is, most organizations try to focus on their talent pool, which they have identified as the high potential, whom they would define as the must-keep employees. But you can do that for everyone. The data can be available for everyone quite easily.
Okay. So it is very interesting. The must-keep employees, right? So there's another argument down there. Even should we even go that way? But we shall not talk about that now, or maybe later, right? Okay. So tell us a little bit more. What are the trends telling us about attrition from your predictive analysis at the moment?
Yeah. So if you look at overall from an industry perspective, I would say, in fact, yesterday we were having a conversation on this. The current generation, they are, I would say, a little impatient as for the results. They want responses, kind of immediate responses. Therefore, what happens is they're very quick to move organizations. So one of the examples in last night when we were discussing on this issue was that there are people in the first 5 years of their career, they moved 3 to 4 jobs. So then the question comes up, if a person has remained with an organization only for a year or so, what is the amount of contribution that person can make in that 1 year? Because any new organization, because of the culture, because of the structure, because of the systems, it probably takes 2 to 3 months to get used to an organization. So therefore, if a person has stayed for 1 year, the question comes up, has he been able to do as a meaningful contribution in that organization?
Okay. Can I interject with a question? Because I think that comes before we get into the next question, right? So that Georgie, there are a few things I want to go back to your answers earlier on, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned that So we're talking about attrition, right? And
Yeah.
you said one of the things that predictive analytics can do, you can do a lot of things, but one of the core things is
Yeah.
attrition. Why? I mean, given your experience in both the corporate side and now on the consulting side, right? So
Yeah.
you've got consulting as in HR consulting, and now this one,
Yeah.
right, in terms of HR tech, right,
Yeah.
and that. Why has attrition become a topic that matters? Why has attrition become? When I say topic that matters, is that people are talking about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, why attrition? Why at that end of the pipeline, not the other parts of the pipeline, right?
Yeah. So, okay. So, my first comment on that would be that, predictive analytics is not being used only for attrition. There are
Yep.
other areas also. Now, let's come
Correct.
back to attrition.
Mm,
So, in attrition, why is it becoming so critical? So,
mm,
uh, I'll give an example from my past life. When I used to work for a large pharmaceutical company, and the sales force, there was an attrition of 25%.
mm,
So, a company which was having probably about a 3 billion revenue in a country, when you have 25% attrition, what
mm,
that translates into is, if I just simplify the whole thing, when a salesperson leaves in the last month of his notice period, most probably his productivity is much less.
mm,
Then it takes, at least, giving a very optimistic picture, it takes 1 month to get his replacement. Now, the new employee probably takes another month, again optimistic, to come to the level of productivity which is expected.
mm,
So each person leaving, it is 3 months of sales loss. So, so typically earlier days, attrition used to be looked at as just as the percentage.
mm,
Now, people are tending to look at it as a business cost. It's a business loss. So it is a
mm,
direct linkage to the business that, a salesperson leaves, you are going to lose at least around 3 months of sales per an employee. When
mm,
you convert that to 25% on a 3 billion revenue,
mm,
about 800 or 1,000 salespeople, that's a huge number.
mm.
That's why
Okay.
the attrition is becoming more critical. The other
Mm,
side, if you look at the general population, because of the talent shortages in many countries, you want to retain your talent as much as possible.
mm,
So, because once you lose some of the talent, leadership level especially, to get it back, it's a difficult thing to do. So,
mm.
therefore, organization focuses engage the employees and retain them. That's the focus.
Okay. Okay. Now, how, where does the current, because cost of doing business has gone up, right? What do I mean by
Yeah.
that? Um, One is that attrition. Number two is people are going out and looking for jobs. We are reading articles and analysis around how people are job hopping
Yeah.
because it's a 20% pay increment,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and you also said the must keep employees. Now
Yeah.
I'm using a term that you use,
Yeah.
and another term for the must keep employees is what we call the talents, right?
Yeah.
The talent pool, right?
Yeah.
And the must keep employees are the ones that we want to hold on to. So if they jump, it's 20% more. We want to hire 3 months. That's first the 3 months
Yeah.
downtime, and that's in a very optimistic,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
positive way
Yeah.
that you get almost seamlessly, right?
Yeah.
Now, so the cost of doing business goes up also, right?
Yeah.
In terms of what we're doing. So then the question is, why then do you see organizations focusing only on the must keep employees? It's almost as if they are the ones that we look at the numbers and we are very, very careful about. Is there another way that organization, looking at what you have seen in predictive analytics, that an organization can think about, right, this cost and containing the cost, and not succumb to the fact that, okay, someone has left, we have to go and look for hires from outside and then pay more, and it's
Yeah.
a chain reaction. Your thoughts?
Yeah. So see, this whole concept of talent pool is one of resource optimization. You have limited resources,
Mm,
so you're kind of constrained that you're not able to do investments in employees, all employees at the same level. Therefore,
yes,
you
correct.
are doing that investment in a differentiated way. The talent
Mm,
pool, probably you are investing more. You probably send them an INSEAD course or course abroad, or
mm,
coach, provide a coach or a mentor or something like that. Whereas lower down, maybe is more on the job learning, on training, e-learning,
mm,
all that. So what we're doing is really differentiating the investments. And because see, the thing is also, when typically when a senior level leadership level person leaves, it is not only, it's just not 1 month. The recruitment
mm,
can last 3 to 6 months.
mm,
You get that person, the new person in. Second is also, the recruitment cost becomes quite high. You're talking about 25 to 30% of that person's annual salary,
mm,
annual compensation, actually. So,
mm,
which means there is a cost element, and also there is a gap to fill for 6 months.
mm,
You- So
mm,
your point is valid. If an organization is able to develop internally, which is what organizations are trying to do, but in some cases does not happen. For
mm,
example, if the guy is a senior level technical expert, you might not have this a duplicate of that guy within the organization.
mm.
Therefore, you need to bring somebody from outside. That's what happens, really.
Okay, that's you did it very, very nicely, because what you've done is you've told us how to think about that investment, right? You said differentiating
Yeah,
investment depending on where you are. So there's a talent, maybe the first
yeah,
what 20%, and then the next 20%. How do you think about investment in them, and
yeah,
how organizations think about it? And that's a very neat way of putting it. And you also did something, you defined keep the must keep employees. We tend to think about the must keep employees, as I did, with
yeah,
talent, as talent, right? But
yes,
there's the leadership position as well,
yeah,
right? That is critical. And if you have if you don't have a smooth or a big pipeline,
yeah,
then if a leadership role is vacant, you have to look outside to fill the
yeah,
leadership role,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You have no choice, because your
yeah,
your leadership role is not going to sustain that next position in, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so very nicely done. I got one more question before I pass on to Ashok to continue. You said in the current generation. What do you mean by the current generation? Could you define that for us?
I mean, the younger generation who are passing out today from either an MBA or a university.
Okay.
I mean, the, if you look at the past, maybe 10, 15 years back,
Mm-hmm.
typically people tended to stay in the first organization for 3 to 5 years. I
Mm,
mean, that's when they are, gaining some practical industrial experience after a kind of academic degree or whatever.
gotcha.
So that was the trend. But now I see that trend is changing. I mean, especially in
Mm,
some countries where the opportunities are available, um, they tend to move within 1 to 2 years. So,
mm.
which means, in the first 5 years, probably they've done three to maybe
Four
three
four
jobs at
years,
least.
three to four jobs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does the analytics tell us? What does the data tell us about reasons for leaving? I mean, I'm going to presume, and I mean,
Yeah.
someone might say, yeah, when you're leaving, you will just say whatever you need to say in the exit interview
Yeah.
and you get out, right? But
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
from your explanation of predictive analytics, that
Yeah.
you're capturing the data from the moment the person joins the organization and their
Right.
journey. So we'll take it that it's more on the ball
Yeah. Yeah.
than an exit interview. So what's the data telling us in terms of the reasons for that
Yeah.
that
Sure.
movement? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
extreme movement.
So, see, the thing is, so I would link it back to the employer brand and the employee value proposition.
Mm,
So, in fact, I was just writing on LinkedIn yesterday something about this. So the EVP, it accesses two things. One is attraction, other one is retention. So at the time of attraction, it is you're projecting to the external world and organization, this is what this company stands for. This is our culture, this is our values, this is what we promise to a new person who's entering into this organization. So that is attraction. Now, retention is okay, I'm joining your organization. You told me this is what I will get. I come into the organization and realize that I'm not getting some of it. In very simple terms, EVP means that attraction, retention. So when you come to the retention part, it is primarily focusing on what did you promise, what did I get? I mean, a classic example from my past experience. See, basic salary is not a problem when you discuss negotiate a compensation package. The problem comes on short-term incentives and long-term incentives. So on short-term incentive, the promise would be, okay, if you achieve all your targets, you get 25% or 30% on target incentive. For whatever reasons, it could be the employee's performance or the company's performance, that 25 or 30% sometimes become 10 or 15% actual earnings. So there is a mismatch, because when a person is moving from a new old organization to new organization, like you mentioned, 20% increase, that 20% increase is based on that person earning that 25 to 30% incentive. So if that does not happen, you probably are going back to your old compensation because you did not earn the incentive which was promised. So you find that so some of the organization face the first year attrition more than 50%. The first year attrition. So you bring in a person, that person realizes within the first 1 year that, picture is not as rosy as it was painted. So this is what was my expectation. This is not what I'm getting. So that's where the attrition levels in the first 1 year becomes very high.
And that's a very not just interesting, it's a very important point, I think, that we sometimes forget. That 20% extra that you're getting, right, which seems like woohoo, it's
Yeah.
20% extra, 25% more, right?
Yeah.
It comes with a price. Nothing is free in
Yeah.
this world, right? It has
Absolutely.
there's a cost benefit analysis. We somehow rather look at the benefit, but you don't look at the cost.
Yeah.
Right?
So again,
Yeah.
just to add there, see, we always focus on building a good employer brand and projecting it outside and saying the best organization, all that. I would say it is better not to overpromise. You overpromise, you raise the expectations to sky level, and when the person comes in, it's all shattered. So therefore, that expectation setting is very important. Realistic expectations. That's what I
Yeah,
would.
realistic expectations,
Yeah.
right? So, and sometimes that can be a bit of it's a struggle because we have that feeling of, oh my goodness, we have to get people in and fill that role, right? We want to get the best, we want to fill that role, and it's an important role, right? It could be a talent role, it could be a leadership role, right?
That's true.
At the same time, I think what you're saying is that we need to have realistic conversations. Yes, it's a good organization to stay to be in, but this is also the reality of the organization, right? Expectations are at this level and what it is, and for someone to have it's not an easy decision to make when you're
It's always a balancing act, actually.
Correct. Yeah. Okay, Ashok, all right, you can
go. I was enjoying this conversation. I was just listening to it because Georgie has got a lot of wealth, man, of information and experience, Georgie, wow. Okay, so what I'm hearing is what I heard about is let's move away from looking at attrition as just a percentage. Let us really look at the cost to the business. Like I said, a very good example was from a sales function, right? If you look at the number of months as a downtime, that is all related to whether all the sales activities and closing ratios and what have you got. The percentages, let's move away from percentage and look
Yeah,
at dollar cost in that sense.
yeah,
And that also allows us to then look at how do we invest in the people, right?
yeah,
Now, and I love the fact that you said one of the reasons why people leave is because the expectations of the brand promise.
yeah,
The,
yeah.
you didn't meet up to the expectations of that brand promise itself, right? So I just love that you have just condensed it to very practical things. Now, interestingly, early on when we asked about trends, you said a question that then you ask of people who stay or for the first 12 months or so is it, are they making a meaningful contribution? Can you
Yeah.
explain a little bit more on that? What do you mean?
Yeah,
Why are you paying so much attention on that 12 to 18 months?
see, my view is that when a person moves, I mean, sometimes these days people are moving not only organizations, but they're also moving industries. So if I look at my personal experience, my first company was a heavy engineering company. Next one was a agricultural equipment manufacturing company. Third was a fast moving consumer goods company.
Wow.
Next one was a telecom company. And the last one was the pharma company. So,
Mm,
you're moving industries, and each industry's got its own specialities.
mm,
Like each organization also got its own specialities. So when you move from one place to the other, just establishing your informal networks within the company, understanding the systems and processes. Just to give an example, when I was in my the telecom company I talked about, we were working on SAP. I moved to the pharma company, we moved to PeopleSoft. So
mm,
like that, the systems and processes itself you have to learn. I mean, it's all very different. So I was just getting used to the culture, getting used to the people, and developing that informal network, that
mm.
becomes very critical. So that's what
Right.
I'm saying. So, typically that process might take 2 to 3 months for you to just get into the organization.
Mhm.
Then you need to start contributing. So that's why I say, the 12 to 18 months kind of stay is a bit short.
Mm, mm. So, do you think that people do really make those contributions, important
I mean,
contributions?
they might be making limited contributions according to me.
Okay.
If it has to be a really meaningful contribution, probably you need 2 to 3 years at least.
Okay. 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 So, Georgie, you probably sound like a Gen Z, you know, because you moved around a lot. So, tell me, what was your motivation for moving different sectors in the first place? What was your motivation?
Okay, so not I wouldn't say that different sectors was conscious in the initial stages,
Mhm.
but couple of examples I would like to give. I mean, I might as well name the company. I mean, I worked for Unilever for about 10 years
Oh, right.
in India, and I had grown well. I had a steady career and all that. But then at the end of 10 years, I decided that, look, I've learned a lot. Unilever is a company where you learn a lot,
Mhm.
systems, processes, everything. There is a lot of learning.
Mm,
And I said, look, now for me, if I move to a smaller company, I can contribute much better. So that's one of the reasons I decided to join Nokia. So
mm,
uh, I used to handle whole of South India for Unilever, which was something like 2,500, 3,000 employees. When I moved to Nokia, I was only looking after the mobile phones HR. When Nokia was entering India, that was 13 people.
mm, mm,
So
mm.
it was a huge shift. Though I mean, Nokia globally was a big company. In India, when I moved there, it was still a very small company. So that that was one of the reasons for that move.
Mm.
And when I look at the next move, again, the reasons are quite different. So when after spending 14 years with Nokia, I decided to move to Pfizer Pharmaceuticals.
Mm.
So there were a couple of things which was of interest to me. One was that it was a new geography for me. I had
Okay.
never handled China before. So therefore, I was getting exposed to a new geography, which is an important geography, China.
Mm,
So that was
mm,
one of the primary reason. Second was also I wanted to, again, so if I were to compare between a high-tech industry and pharma industry, the HR transformations in the high-tech industry had already taken place, whereas industries like pharma was going through that HR transformation. So what I had learned from a high-tech industry, it was time to apply that in the pharma in terms of the HR transformation. So I would say the career decisions many times, uh, if you're able to kind of really think through it logically, why are you making that change? That question is very important. Just because
mm,
20% increase going, it's not a very great idea, you know,
mm.
because if you're not going to learn more, develop more, either in terms of a higher level role or different kind of role or whatever, it's not very meaningful just for the compensation. Because, see, typically what happens is when you hire, you get that 20% or 30% or whatever increase.
Mm.
Organizations are not stupid. Next salary review, they're going to adjust that.
Right.
So don't get too excited by the 20% because I've, spent 4 decades in HR.
Mhm.
So I know this insides of the organization, the compensation, how it works.
Right, right. Now, this is very interesting because you see, when I listen to your motivation, right, you are very intrinsically driven because you wanted to learn, you wanted to make
Yeah.
contribution, and you took on challenges, and you wanted to understand businesses from a different aspects, whether it's the transformation part of things and all, is it? So you were very much intrinsically motivated to wanting to learn. So I'm going to flip the question now. When you said the younger generation, when they come in for a short period, let's assume 24 months.
Yeah.
Isn't that their same level of motivation that I can assume? That's why they're coming in to learn.
Yeah.
So
So,
my question
yeah.
then would be, right, from an attrition point of view, is it okay for us to prepare workplaces for the younger generation to come in for 24 months and then leave? Should we even switch our mindset that way? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point because, see, in today's world, um, if that is the trend which is emerging,
Hmm.
people are going to stay with you for 2 years, right? So it is better that you create the structures in such a way, also do kind of anticipated talent planning, saying that, okay, this person is likely to be with you for 2 years.
Mhm.
Therefore, let me have the backup plans if that person is going to leave. So there's a lot of proactive planning which is required and which is possible with today's technology.
Okay, okay, I like that.
So,
I like that. So what you're saying is, yes, the predictive analysis is telling us there are trends that people are leaving, and let's make
yeah,
some assumption with the younger generation who are also talents in a way, right?
yeah,
Let's assume they're going to stick around for 24 months. So then, what can the business leaders do to A, number one, improve the score, or B, number two, in terms of proactive planning? What can they do
yeah.
to
So
empower
again,
the
yeah.
staff?
So I'll go back to the technology side here.
Mhm.
See, earlier days, the employee engagement measurement was done once a year. There was a survey which was sent out to all the employees. They
Mm.
answer that, and the survey result probably takes about a month to come. Then you do the analysis and start taking actions and all that. Today, with the technology, the employee engagement measurement is a continuous process. You have almost like a modometer where you are looking at the employee engagement on a continuous basis. Therefore, you are able to take actions and responses very quickly, not wait for 1 year
Mm.
to get the results of the engagement survey and all that. So, and today technology allows a line manager, if he decides, okay, I want to make a dipstick measure of the engagement in my team, he can just send out a survey himself because the survey is already in the system.
Okay.
He just need to select the questions, send it out. By evening, he gets the results. The analytics are there. He can take action. So that's the technological shift which is taking place in terms of measuring engagement, looking at predicting attrition, all that.
Okay, so what you're saying is one of the things that is available to the leaders today is the technology, so they can do very quick analysis to come up with the plans. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What else can they do to improve the scores? Let's say if they can predict that, okay, I'm going to lose X percentage, or it can be dollar cost. What else can they do?
See, again, one of the trends, what we are seeing is that, the current generation, the younger generation, they're not very interested in classroom lecture kind of training. They're more
Ah, okay.
interested in learning through mentoring and coaching. Therefore, a
Nice.
leader's role as a mentor or a coach becomes extremely critical. So, therefore, that are the skills leaders have to develop, because they don't have the patience to go and sit 3 days in a training program and listen to somebody coming and lecturing and all that stuff. It's more into personal development through mentoring and coaching. So
Hmm.
therefore, one of the key skills I would say every leader should have is that ability to mentoring and coaching their team members.
Hmm.
Nice. Nice. Yes, Sham, you got a question. I can see pondering.
Yeah. That's interesting, right? Because I was going to ask a similar question in terms of just beyond the data, right? Looking at the
Yeah,
data and then making decisions that are on the hard side of decisions, right?
yeah,
Where it's like, okay, how do we play with the numbers? How do we tweak this? How do we look at our hiring practices and things like that, right? Which is the process or the system
yeah,
bit. What are leaders then looking at now? And you said mentoring and coaching. And this is interesting because I'm cross-checking that again, not cross-checking, but I'm checking. I'm kind of putting it, juxtaposing it against the your experience. So your experience when you described it to me, it's like initially you looked at breadth, right? You looked at
yeah,
breadth in this large organization and
yeah,
you built your breadth. It took you 10 years to do that.
yeah,
And then you decided I'm going to shift. And my shift was then depth,
yeah,
right? You went deep because
yeah, yeah,
now with a smaller organization, resources are different, resources are fewer or lesser. I need to go deep because I need to know my subject matter expertise. Now,
yeah,
your breadth, because of 10 years, would have given you that, but this would drive it down a little bit more, right? It
yeah,
probably also gave you some opportunities to experiment because risk was maybe lower
yeah,
or
yeah,
maybe the
yeah,
other way around, I'm not too sure, but at some point you decided, okay, I'm going to shift again, right?
yeah,
And that's when you looked at, oh, that China position might give me a different learning curve, and the
yeah,
learning curve there was about going back to breadth again, right?
yeah,
Because now you're
yeah,
looking at a different culture, national culture, then you have a work culture, right? Even though the brand might be the same. So Unilever India would be
yeah,
different from Unilever in China, right?
yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
taking an example, or Pfizer for that matter.
Yeah,
So your growth trajectory had an interesting that you went breadth, depth, then you go breadth again,
yeah,
right? And then you're saying you probably at right now, knowing you're probably gone down to depth again, right? Because
yeah,
you're focused in one area. Now if you're looking at from that perspective, right, and I'm a leader, mentoring is one thing, coaching is one thing, and I cannot
yeah, yeah.
play both roles, right?
I know. Yeah, yeah,
So how do I create as a leader that breadth and depth for someone who's working for me? Because I think a lot of us make that kind of decisions, right? I'm now doing this, I want to go and specialize in this. At some
yeah,
point I'm going to say too much specialization, I want to go back to breadth again, right?
yeah, yeah,
um how do I have how do I think about it? How do I have either that coaching conversation or that mentoring conversation so that I can create some of these opportunities for my team so they stay longer because they're getting that exposure there. I
yeah,
mean, sometimes, fully understanding that some organizations cannot do that for
Yeah.
a variety of reasons, right? But if you had the opportunity or within your scope of control, what can we think about? How do we think about that as a leader?
Yeah. So,
Hmm.
see, what I would say is typically the way uh, careers were viewed was upwards. It was always a hierarchical growth.
Oh, okay.
So, career growth meant promotion, better salary, better compensation, going up, up, up.
Hmm.
In today's world, that is becoming difficult because organizations are getting flatter, and therefore people have to look at horizontal moves as well. What that means is, which means that conversation between the leader and the team member becomes critical. The team member needs to understand, why am I moving laterally? The learning opportunity in the new role has to be clearly explained.
Hmm.
Otherwise, the team members views, oh, I've been in this role for 3 years and I'm just going to another role parallelly, horizontally. Where is the growth? So
Hmm.
the thing is, you have to look at the organization as a pyramid. So you make a few lateral moves, then you go higher in the pyramid, then further higher in the pyramid. So the base, so the best way to explain it would be, let me just take a HR example. So HR's got specialization. There is recruitment, there is compensation benefit, there is employee relations, HR technology. All those building blocks are there. Now, if somebody wants to become the head of HR of a reasonable sized organization, it would be ideal if he had the exposure to all those areas. It can be through a generalist role or through a specialist role. Either way, if I'm sitting on the top of a department or an organization, if I have functional experience down below, that helps me to succeed in that role.
Hmm. Hmm. So move sideways in order to go up,
Yeah. And you
right?
see, growing sideways is always, also the learning opportunity is important there. So you cannot grow always upwards. So there is a new learning in the horizontal move.
Hmm.
Once you complete that, then you move up.
Hmm. Okay. So how then does that work in flatter structures, right? We've just heard recently a lot of there's a lot of noise in the
Yeah.
market about flatter structures, removing the middle manager position. I think personally it's not the right thing to do. I think
Yeah.
we're going to head into lots of issues. Okay, it's that middle manager role is an underappreciated
Yeah.
role, right? But yeah, things work in trends and patterns here, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, what's your thinking around how does that work with flatter structures? If
Yeah.
you have flatter structures, how am I going to move this way?
Yeah.
Because yeah.
So see, the flatter structures, basically there are two, three underlying reasons why it's happening. One
Mm-hmm.
is cost, of course. Second is in terms of, when you have a flatter structure, you are empowering people, you're giving them more responsibilities, the communication becomes faster. Again, if I were to give an example, when we were setting up the new organization structure for Nokia Siemens Networks, when it was a joint venture between Nokia and Siemens, one of the things which we said was, in no department, we should have more than 7 layers between the CEO and the bottommost layer. So what it does is it helps in communication. For example, if you want to communicate the vision of the organization right down to the bottom of the organization, if you have 10 or 12 layers, it becomes kind of get lost in the transit. So
Mm,
therefore, it's important that structure. Having said that, it is important to have where required that structure. For example, many organizations are now toying with the idea of there was a global structure, regional structure, country structure. That was a
mm,
typical structure.
mm.
Now what they're doing is they're removing the regional structure and saying, I'll do a business unit structure. So there is a global BU and then directly goes to the country. So the BUs, the business unit is represented in the country. So that's the way that regional layer is getting removed. Again, I would go back to technology because technology is the enabler in creating flatter structures. Because the earlier days, the typical span of control used to be maximum 10 or 11 people for a leader. So now, and what that means is you have to do the entire people processes for that team which is reporting to you. And those days, many of it was, I wouldn't call manual, less technology enabled. So today, for example, if you want to do performance management, there are your objectives are cascaded down in the system. The results can be linked to your other CRM systems. The results are automatically populated into your performance management system. Therefore, a person can do more of it in terms of the time taken. So again, like I mentioned earlier, engagement is very different from the earlier days. So you're kind of monitoring it on a continuous basis because of the technology available. Again, so for example, if you have a dispersed organization, either multi-country or multi-location, with the technology, you are able to monitor that from the center. For example, productivity or attrition or whatever the parameter you want to look at, your cost, for example, you're able to look at it because technology enable you to do that.
Okay. So now I can see a business case for it, right? Because you take out that one particular layer or a double layer, but you put in technology,
Yeah,
right? And tech helps you actually now do more
more.
with less. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
with less in that sense. Okay. Okay. All right.
Again,
I
maybe
can. Yeah.
it just came to my mind that one of the things which we are doing, which is again talking about reducing the pressure on leaders
Mm,
to do the in a manufacturing setup. You need the shift management, rostering, absenteeism management, all that.
mm,
So we have come out with solutions now. All that is automated. A supervisor on an assembly line, he does not have to run around to get a replacement for a guy who's not turned up for the work. It's all in the system. The system finds a
mm,
replacement automatically. So those kind of technological enhancements really helps in terms of the workload of the manager, the middle
mm,
manager.
mm. And allows the focus to turn into something else, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So he is getting the information and data on his desk so that he can take actions on them. Instead of running around and solving problems, he is looking at the analytics and deciding, okay, this is a critical issue right now. Let me focus on that.
Okay, nice. Ashok, over to you.
Interesting, because you're talking about flatter structures and all. There was an article that just came out a couple of days back, maybe. A German pharmaceutical company, Bayer,
Right.
right? Or Bayer,
Bio. Yeah.
Bayer, right? So they were saying they're getting rid of the middle managers and encouraging the downlines to self-organize themselves,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you seen that happen in your past lives, and what are your thoughts around that?
So one example I can give is again from the Unilever days when we were setting up a tea factory. So typically, what happens is tea factory there is a packing machine, and that's about it. Like it's just packing, right? And so when the machine breaks down, the operator becomes uh, redundant. I mean, he's not operating the machine, and he's just sitting, and the maintenance guy comes in, does the maintenance. So what we did there was it was partly multi-skilling, but also the making that units of a packing machine self-sufficient. We train the operator to do the maintenance as well.
Mm.
So the operator, when the machine breaks down, operator is not just sitting idle. He is also able to maintain the machine. So it is part of multi-skilling, but again, at the same time, making it the self-sufficient unit on a particular machine.
Mm, mm.
That's one of the ways which we have done in my past life, actually.
Okay, so what I'm hearing now is this. All right, you've got your key employees in the sense where it's called the must keep employees that are high
Yeah,
talent, who are leaders. Okay, who are leaders. So in these flatter structures, what we are seeing is maybe the middle managers are going to disappear, right? And then what we are seeing is the other group of people who are coming in, right? We are making an assumption that they're going to stick around for 24 months or so, right? So we've got to find ways to empower them with quick information. We're making the assumption that they stick around only for 24 months. So in all of these flatter structures, right? For the leader skills, you said they need to know mentoring or coaching and probably even data analytics in that sense, right? So what does this flatter structures mean for attrition then?
yeah. So let me just take a step back. So we discussed in terms of the flatter structures, what are the benefits? Now let's look at the negative side as well. See, there are two, three issues. One is workload increases when you have a flatter structure.
Yep.
Second is more critical than that is the career path. A university graduate comes and joins the company. He works 2 years or how many ever number of years. If he needs to grow, he cannot suddenly jump to a leader. He need a in between step. So that's the reason why this country, region, global was there. You work in a country, gain experience, then you move to a region, then you move to the global. So ultimately, there has to be a balancing act between the two. Purely from a career progression and learning and growth perspective, also, that middle management cannot disappear. You might reduce the numbers because of the technology and all that, but that step is still required. Nobody can, come out of a university, work for a few years, 3 or 4 years, and jump straight away, become a regional head of an organization, a large size organization. That's very difficult. So that step is still required.
So what I'm hearing is, yes, we got to look at the disadvantages also, which is
Yep.
about the workload increasing, the career paths and all.
Yeah.
Okay. So how can you then help with the attrition part of things then? Let's say that
Yeah.
we have to go with the flatter structure. What can
Yeah.
be done to help with the attrition rates?
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, there is a bit of a cultural shift which is required. Like
Okay.
earlier days, the hierarchical growth, which was people got used to it. Now that horizontal moves has to become a part of the day-to-day thing, culture.
Mm.
That it takes time to set that expectation and build that culture over a period of time. That look, I mean, you've done this role for 2 years or whatever. Then you're moving horizontally to learn something new. So the emphasis on the learning. So, like I mentioned, that pyramid to come together, you need to set the base first. That is horizontal movements, learning, then moving up. So that
Nice.
culture expectation setting is very important.
Nice.
Nice. Yes, Sham, you have a question. Because I just love this, is it? Because what you're saying is, yes, even in a flatter organization, what I'm continuously hearing is that the base is important. It's about the learning, right?
Yeah,
Make sure that the person comes in, picks up whatever it is. There must be some form of ways for the person to progress upwards also, because career
yeah.
progression is still
Oh
important
yeah,
for the
absolutely,
person. Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
So
Nice.
again, so one of the things probably which I didn't touch upon was
Mm.
for every leader to engage their team members one to one,
Mhm.
build a relationship. See, like Sham mentioned earlier, you have technology, hard data, all that is good, but heart is also important. Many times you are able to get the best outcomes out of a team member if you have a good personal relationship. I mean, I personally very strongly believe that many times those relationships are built outside the workplace, not in the workplace. It's a very formal. I expect you to deliver an outcome, and I'm your boss. You're the team member. That relationship is very, very formal. Uh, I wouldn't call it hierarchical, but very formal relationship. It's important to build that informal relationship outside the workplace. That see, I mean, I can give you an example. There was a boss with whom I was, very good relationship. We used to go play golf and go out to the country for to play golf with and all that kind of stuff. When I was reporting to him, I don't think I could have gone to him with a resignation letter. That's what I mean the relationship. It will take me a real push factor if I had to go with a resignation letter to him. So that's what I mean by that engagement, personal relationship, very critical.
Okay, it's interesting you bring in personal relationship because the other co-host Muller and I just finished a program with a pharmaceutical company, and one of the things that they shared in their when we do this activity called the Pride Line, it's what difference do you want to make? Okay,
Yeah,
how do you make a difference, right, in the organization or uh, with with the organization or through the organization, right? And some of them very openly shared that they were looking around, all right,
yeah,
and they're looking around, but the only thing holding them back, right, is what's holding them back from accepting or going further into the next step is that I don't know whether I'll get the same type of boss out there,
yeah.
right?
Just
I
to, just
don't
to
know
add
whether,
to, let me add.
yeah,
uh, You know,
sure.
we touched upon only on the boss. I would say the team members also. The
Mm,
entire relationship is important. That whole ecosystem where you are sitting, your
mm,
boss, your team members, that is where the critical relationships come in. Sorry to
very
interrupt.
nice. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to kind of you've already answered the question in a slight in different ways throughout, right? So this is your 1 minute question, and it's a good way for you to summarize
Yeah,
what you've talked about in the last maybe 5-10 minutes. We've looked at we created the topic, or we the topic for today is about predictive and
yeah,
analytics, right? And we came to the discussion through a lens of retention or attrition, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, Now, if you go to attrition, that's kind of the last bit, but you've got in the middle engagement when
yeah,
someone comes in and you're engaging people, right? You shared about how predictive now what technology has helped us do, or for
yeah,
leaders, is that it's access to data a lot
yeah,
more frequent, right? So
yeah,
you
yeah,
are almost on a daily basis, if I will, looking at
yeah,
it, right? And so if you are looking, so you might say, okay, so what are engagement scores, right? That's one thing, but there's also retention, right? How we're keeping people. One is engaging people. People can be engaged, but they still leave. But the
yeah,
important thing is you engage people and they stay, which is the
yeah,
retention,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So how can not just leaders, but I think organizations and even team members, right, as you said,
yeah,
design or be part of crafting or curating cultures. So how can we do that strengthen retention?
yeah. So, like you mentioned, engagement plays a very critical role in retention.
Mm,
And the informal relationships, informal networks, personal relationships, like I mentioned, they have to be built many times outside the organization, outside the work environment. Therefore, getting into activities outside the workplace, that's one way of creating that bonding, between the employees and the teams, really. And so again, different cultures, different things work. Some cultures, food is a kind of a bonding factor. Some cultures, sports is a bonding factor. Some cultures, it could be art or whatever. So whatever that binding factor is, having that in place really helps in terms of both engagement and retention.
Mm. Yeah, and sometimes we dismiss it, or we reduce the or we poo-poo away that
Yeah,
idea, that thing that binds us together, right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and we need to pay more attention to it. So, Georgie, we've come to so quickly to the
Wow.
1 hour of conversations, right? And I want to thank you very much for saying yes to us, and to not just share for not just share your expertise now in terms of tech and data and predictive analytics, but how you very nicely weaved it into also your experiences in the past, right, in corporate, and
yeah.
how we can think about it, right? My takeaway, before I share my takeaway, but I just wanted to thank you for that before I hand it over to Ashok to do that, and then we'll close the show.
Yeah,
Ashok.
Thank you
thank
very
you
much.
very much, Georgie. I've learned a lot just listening to your 1 hour, and the fact that you shared with us, for all the leaders here who are listening in, right? Use technology as an enabler, get the data to make an impact to your teams, to your organization. Maybe perhaps we need to start shift our thinking about how we inspire people. But I love the fact that at the end of the day, you said the most important, I mean, I'm putting my own words,
Yeah,
is that human relationship still,
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
right? So thank you very much, Georgie, right?
All
Thank
Thank
you,
right.
you very much.
Sham and Ashok. It is lovely
You're
having this
lovely
session.
having this conversation
Yeah,
with you.
I
Yes.
enjoyed the conversation.
yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah. We are, we are,
Okay.
we are all we all three Easties, so maybe
Yeah,
we'll get together for
yeah.
something that's either coffee or maybe Indian cuisine. No? Okay, we don't
Sure,
know
sure.
what binds us together as well.
Definitely.
Sure.
I'm going to put you into the to the
Yeah,
backstage, and while Ashok and I close the show
yeah,
in
sure.
a second. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Mm. Wow.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
So
that's a lot of learning.
yeah. I think I can. I think maybe there is a way of coming to terms with this flatter structures, and also thinking about
Mm.
this middle manager role, and Georgie put that into perspective for us, in that it is not completely going. All
Mm.
right, and it brought to mind how in organizations, all in businesses, have always done shifts, and the
Yep.
shift will shift again, right? Like,
Yep.
for example, procurement goes from global to local to
Yep.
regional, right?
Mm.
You have business units being managed out of global.
Mm.
Then there's a
Mm.
matrix organization. So we all experimenting at some point, and sometimes in the business world, some trends and patterns pick up, and people tend to jump on it and then figure
Yep.
out whether it works for themselves or not, right? So
That's right.
yeah, so that's kind of my takeaway. And that I second one would be moving sideways in order to go upwards,
That's right.
right? We sometimes know it, but I think we've forgotten it, because we tend to think like everybody wants to go up, 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 as Georgie
That's
said.
right.
I
That's
think
right.
that's a good way of thinking about
Yeah,
our development as well.
that's true.
Ashok?
No, thank you. I agree with you. I think we are all in an experimental stage.
Mm.
The business costs, the pressures on the business, from a cost point of view, will make us to be more creative in the way we look at things, how we engage people, how we empower them to help us drive those business results. Yeah. And I think going forward, data is going to help us analyze what are the best ways without
Mm.
forgetting the human part of the relationships.
Yep, exactly, right. And I think at the end of it, it is the human part, and that is why we have this show every week on Thursdays, because we are grappling with the human part every day,
That's right.
as leaders in whatever role that we do, in whatever sector of the world of business that we are in.
Mhm.
We are grappling at home and at work, right? We're always grappling with the human part. So
Yeah.
join us next week as we explore another topic that matters. I'm not going to give away the
Sure.
surprise, but yeah, join us next week for the last week of April. And until then, be safe. Enjoy the evening as you see fit, and bye. Until then, Ashok,
Bye-bye.
over to you.
That's right. Thank you all very much and see you soon. Bye-bye.